Each year, the Gallup Polling Organization publishes a list of the most trusted professions called the Honesty and Ethics Poll. And for 2023, nurses rank as the most ethical and honest profession among 23 different professions measured each year. This isn't news, as nurses have regularly ranked number one since they appeared in the poll in 1999. Of course, the president of the American Nurses Association is right there, ready to tell us all why this is so. Jennifer Menzik Kennedy, the ANA president, says nurses are there when you're born, they're there when you die, and everywhere in between. How profound. She goes on to say that individually and collectively, we're making a difference in people's lives in the worst and best of times. What Jennifer has to explain to us, however, is why nurses' percentage of trust has slipped pretty significantly over the last few years. Back in 2019, 85% of people polled said nurses ranked high or very high in the trust category. That actually went up to over 90% in 2020. As a reminder, 2020 was the year some nurses took selfies with masks and respirators and full PPE and spread them all over social media. Oh, and they were also taking plenty of poignant selfies demonstrating sadness, often crying in hallways and, some hospital somewhere. Anyway, despite the crying and the PPE, nurses dropped from over 90% trust to just 78% in 2023. So why did that happen? Now, to be fair, every single profession in the survey dropped too. Oh, with the exception of union labor leaders, who actually went up 1% in the trust score. Medical doctors, by the way, continue to plummet. In 2023, they're scoring 56% trust, which is down 9% since 2019. So what does this tell us? Well, for one, it tells us that, doctor, we may let you take care of us, but that doesn't mean that we trust you. And nurses, maybe the social media hand was a little overplayed. Maybe a little too much crying, a little too much showing off tight-fitting scrubs, and that includes men, and not enough leadership from the organizations that are supposed to represent nurses like Jennifer's ANA. Full disclosure, I've never been a member of any nursing organization. Well, I'll take that back. I received a discounted student membership in the New York State Coalition of Nurse Practitioners way back in the day. That organization doesn't exist anymore. It's now known as the Nurse Practitioner Association of New York State, and I do not belong. So really, why would trust in nurses be on the wane? I mean, Jen is right when she says nurses are there at the beginning and the end. Not always, of course, but I get what she means. As I mentioned in a recent video, I had a family member hospitalized for a week in my own hospital. And that week really gave me a chance to sit there from morning until night to watch firsthand from the patient's perspective just what exactly goes on. I'm going to start off by saying each and every nurse that cared for my family member was kind and caring and very patient. I truly believe that they were all doing the best that they could. So nothing I'm about to say is the fault of any nurse, for sure. But I know from the patient and family perspective, what I observed is perhaps one of the reasons why nurses have lost some ground in the trust and ethics category. Again, no fault of the nurses, in my opinion. Let's lay the blame where it really belongs. It belongs with the system, the industrial hospital system, the factory that accepts labor shortages as normal and unchangeable. It's, in fact, become the new normal. Not enough nurses, not enough of just about everyone. If you need a transport to MRI, be prepared to wait a long time. And housekeeping, well, they're doing the best they can, but there's just not enough of them either. And when I sit at work in the emergency department, I now know that's one of the many reasons why patients are sitting hours, even days in the emergency department, waiting for a hospital bed to open up upstairs. I mean, even if the patient upstairs is ready for discharge, housekeeping needs to clean the room first. Patient transporters have to come and get that patient down to the lobby. And, just the general delay of everything from lab work that takes hours to result, x-rays that are sent 3 states away to be read. Consultants who are in the operating room all day and don't begin to round and discharge patients until the OR slows down, sometimes late afternoon or late evening. There's 1,000 moving parts in a hospital, and if your hospital is a trauma center, a burn center, a pediatric center, a stroke center, an academic center, there's an order of magnitude increase in those moving parts. But who gets the blame when the Tylenol isn't delivered promptly or the call bell doesn't get answered immediately? Of course, it's the bedside nurse. Another thing that does complicate matters, and I observe this daily, is the number of travel nurses on the floors. And not just travel nurses from the US, but travel nurses whose English is a second language. Not knocking nurses from other countries, definitely, not at all. In fact, culturally, many of them respect elders, for example, a lot more than some of us purebred Americans do, which means that they seem to listen and care for the older folks pretty darn well. But I observed many nurses who were just young and inexperienced, and that often required that the charge nurse or the nurse manager come to the bedside to help them with something that they had never seen before or at least weren't familiar with. Totally understandable. But the lack of experience on the floors in the hospital contributes to a patient's or a family's perception that no one knows what they're doing. I understood it. My brother and sister didn't always until I could explain it to them. But that's the thing. I was there to interpret for my family what was happening, or in some cases not happening fast enough. All this boils down to the nurse at the bedside. He or she will sometimes get the credit, but more often the blame when something doesn't go right. Okay, so there's that. But I also think nursing slipped in the ethics category when organized nursing began, honestly, just following the party line regarding things like vaccinations. For all the, quote, doctors of nursing practice running around, not to mention the PhDs like me, none were visibly demonstrating critical thinking when it came to public health. That was a missed opportunity for some nurses to really take charge, do some research, and perhaps discover that what we were, and in some cases still are doing, might not be the best way. Now, I'm going to say that in my case, my defense, I did speak out here and there and immediately learned that I need a job. And if I wanted to keep that job, I'd better focus on something else. Oh, and roll up my sleeve, which I did 2, maybe 3 times. But I would think that people like Jen from the ANA, the president of the American Nurses Association, could have assigned some people around her with lots of letters after their names and done a little research, like nursing research. And they, unlike me, wouldn't be necessarily threatened with having to look for a new job if they dared to question the party's talking points. Well, it is what it is. Trust in nurses, although still high, it's slipping. I think President Jen from the ANA and leaders of all the other multi-lettered acronyms that supposedly represent nurses should start living in the real world. She's welcome to sit in the emergency department with me, and I'd happily tutor her. That's all I have to say about that. Thanks for watching, and we'll meet again in the next video. Thanks.